The City of Parksville recognizes the people of the Coast Salish nations and their traditional territory upon which we gather with gratitude. I'm going to call to order the public hearing for Wednesday, September the 7th, and I will ask the corporate officer to introduce the public hearing.
Thank you. So the Local Government Act requires a public hearing be held before council adopts an amendment to the zoning bylaw or official community plan. Hard copies of the staff reports and related information respecting the subject amendment bylaws have been available for public examination at City Hall located at 100 Jensen Avenue East in the Parksville Civic and Technology Center since July 5th, 2022. At this public hearing, all persons who believe their interests in property to be affected by the proposed bylaw shall be afforded an opportunity to be heard on matters contained within the bylaw. Anyone wishing to be heard on the amendment bylaw must come to the microphone at the appropriate time, clearly state their name and civic address or city of residence. Council requests that speakers restrict their presentations to the proposed bylaw. The purpose of this public hearing is for council to hear from interested persons in relation to the impact of the proposed bylaw on their property. Council's authority is limited to regulation in relation to the use of land. Council does not have the authority to regulate in relation to the user of land. As such, council requests speakers restrict their presentations to the proposed bylaw and the uses permitted under that bylaw, and refrain from any comments in relation to possible users of the subject property. Council will not tolerate inappropriate personal attacks or comments which are discriminatory or defamatory. The function of council this evening is to listen to the public presentations and not engage in debate. Whether you're for or against the proposed bylaw, during the course of the public hearing, council would ask that you do not display any outbursts as a courtesy to all present this evening. Council asks that you treat all speakers with respect and neither cheer or applaud when you agree with the speaker's presentation, nor jeer or boo when you disagree with the speaker's presentation. Council wishes to ensure every speaker has a fair opportunity to be heard, that the environment at the public hearing is a positive one, and that individuals do not feel uncomfortable or intimidated from expressing their views, either in support of or in opposition to the proposed bylaw. Again, council will not tolerate comments or behavior that are intimidating or create a negative environment which deters people from speaking. No presentations or submissions will be received by council on the proposed bylaw after the motion for termination of the public hearing for the proposed bylaw has been adopted. So this evening, there is one item on the agenda, Zoning and Development Amendment Bylaw 2022, number 20134. It proposes to amend the current single-family residential RS1 zoning with a text and map amendment to comprehensive development CD32 zoning to facilitate multifamily residential, tourist accommodation, and seniors-oriented uses in an apartment-type style building of up to 4 stories in height at 465 Island Highway West. And as of 4 p.m. on September 7th, no items of correspondence have been received in response to this application.
Thank you. Okay, so we're only talking about 456 Island Highway West in this discussion. So I would like to invite anybody who would like to speak to come forward to the microphone, give their name and civic address for the record. Calling for the first time. For a second time, I'd like to invite anyone who would like to speak to come forward. And for a third and final time, invite anyone who would like to come to speak, anyone who would like to speak to come forward. I need a motion to, well, there's no correspondence. And I need a motion to terminate the public hearing. So Councillor Chandler's, Councillor O'Brien, discussion. Oh, yeah, discussion. All those in favor? Carried. Okay, so as of now, council cannot receive any additional information. Moving right into the meeting then. Parksville Council is pleased to sponsor BC Cultural Days in Oceanside, a 3-week recognition of this region's exceptional creativity. Culture Days will be celebrated from September the 23rd through to October the 16th and will feature 5 unique and exciting events in our community. There is something for everyone, and the events will connect our residents and businesses to the annual nationwide celebration of arts and culture in Canada. Events are free or by donation, and everyone is welcome. Details are available on Let's Talk Parksville and the Macmillan Arts Center. For the consent agenda, I have 3 items: minutes of council meeting, minutes of the special council meeting for August the 25th, and approval of the council meeting agenda. Call them all together. Councillor Greer, seconded by Councillor Wilson. Any errors or omissions? Call for the vote. All those in favor? It's carried. Thank you. Now, at this point in time, Councillor Greer has asked if he could make a statement. So we would look forward to hearing from him.
Thank you, Your Worship. Since I'm not running again for council, I have a few thank yous I would like to mention. I have been in politics at every level since I was 20. I have followed and written about municipal politics. Being in business for 40 years, I paid close attention to what was happening in my communities, especially spending and taxation. Over the years, I've seen many weak councils. This can have a devastating effect on community. Elections are important. It is my opinion that this council rates as one of the best I have seen over many years of covering municipal affairs. I think our Mayor, Ed Main, has done a great job over the past 4 years, along with councillors Frass, O'Brien, Patterson, Chandler, and Wilson. I would like to thank them as a member of this council. It has been a very successful term considering the problems of COVID over the almost the last 3 years. This council has served the people of Parksville well and accomplished a great deal. The residents are being served at a very high level from all of our staff in every department here at the city. I would like to give a special thanks to Kiva, our CEO, our corporate officer, Amanda, Deb, our manager of communications, Blaine, our manager of planning, and our fire chief, Mark Norris. I have appreciated their friendship over my time on council. They are all very dedicated and do a great job for the residents. Members of staff have always worked in great harmony with this council. Last but not least, I would like to thank my wife, Ruthie, who has been supportive of me through all my business ventures and my political endeavors. I also like to thank my many friends and residents who have been very kind and supported me over these many, many years that I have served on council. I was always community-minded. Being involved in many large projects over the years has been rewarding. Being involved in politics has been a great journey for me, but everything has to come to an end. So thanks for the memories.
Thank you, Councillor Greer. It's a very difficult time for myself as well because of our friendship that has ensued since 2008 when we met each other in the very first, in my very first election. I sure will miss having you at the table and always being the keeper of the purse strings, so to speak. So we wish you all the best. We certainly do acknowledge Ruthie as being the kingpin for the whole situation. There's no doubt about that. We've always known that. We just didn't want to tell you. But all the best. And I'm going to keep bugging you, so it doesn't matter. I'll be talking to you on a regular basis. Thank you. All right, moving right along. We've received, I need to amend the agenda if you don't mind. I'm sorry, this was pointed out after. So we have received correspondence from District Group requesting the postponement of the public hearing scheduled for September the 19th, 2022. We'd like to add this item under correspondence item 3D for receipt and discussion. I need a mover and a seconder for the three recommendations. Moved by Councillor Patterson, second by Councillor Greer. Is there any discussions on this? Seeing none, I will call for a vote. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Delegations. I have a delegation request here from Mr. Gray. I don't see him in the crowd. I did see you in the crowd, though. Bill, just for the knowledge of everybody, could you give your name and address, please?
I'm subbing in for Nigel because he had a family emergency. So
Very well.
they asked me to just come in and do this slide. This is new for me, so somebody might have to tell me how I move to the next. Oh, you can do that? Perfect.
Just tell her when you need it changed.
Perfect. So what we're looking for at our project at 243 Corfield Street South is to have a zoning amendment application put through. On the next screen, you'll see the location, which is to the right by the new entrance to the side of Berwick. Next screen, please. We applied in 2021 to change the zoning from in order to facilitate the provision of two additional residential units under the BC Housing Affordable Homeowner Program. We wanted to try this as a pilot project in Parksville to see if it would be accepted by the community and the people out there looking for new homes. We completed the building in February of 2022. And since that time, we haven't been able to sell these units or have anybody be accepted under the AHOP program. So they've been empty for about seven months. Unfortunately, we found that the AHOP program was very unworkable. We had multiple parties that were interested that either didn't have the correct financing, couldn't come up with the correct down payment. We had one person that made a little too much money. No family members, parents, or anybody could help with the down payment. So the units have been sitting empty. And we did this for one of the reasons is that we are doing larger projects in Parksville, and we wanted to see if this program would be beneficial for everybody involved. We are requesting that we do a bylaw amendment as is seen by the sections noted above, that we increase the number of dwellings to 5, and that we also remove the referencing of the AOP program in its entirety from the bylaw that was made earlier in the year. We are willing to provide an amenity directly to the city. Otherwise, this would have been payable to BC Housing. The total contribution by us would be $55,000 for use at your own discretion for whatever program you feel fit to use it. At this time, I'll take some questions. I will say that we tried multiple realtors, had mortgage brokers involved. The lack of communication was an issue with BC Housing that didn't help us, nor when requested for any additional literature that could help us sell these units. We were met with nothing, no respondents, other than our communication team is still working on it, which this started in November, December. And so at the end of May, we were forced after, which was probably the hottest period in real estate, as you know, not having any interest, more after the first 5 or 6 people attempted to get involved in the program. On another note, which is kind of a good thing, 2 of the 3 units that did sell were to younger families, one starting a new family and the other one with 2 younger children, which is what we were hoping to see there. Now I'll take any questions from anybody involved.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for the delegation? Councillor Chandler.
Thank you for coming in and stepping in last minute for
New to
Nigel. I'm sure that's not a comfortable thing, but I just wanted to say thanks for trying the program. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of turmoil at BC Housing right now with lots going on, and it's unfortunate that we see something like this that could have turned into a long-term thing that you would feel confident in that you're not going to now. So I think we need to make sure that BC Housing really looks at this and tries to fix that as quick as they can. So I just wanted to comment on that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Your Worship, and it's true to the delegation. Thanks for showing up here tonight. I'm surprised and disappointed, in what you've had to go through. Anyways, we thought that this was a good project to try out the AHOP program, and had worked in the past in other areas and so forth. I'm not sure if things have changed in your dealings with it would be BC Housing in this particular case. Have they made any indications to you that they are maybe looking at revising or reviewing the program for better effectiveness, or is this something that we just drop off our radar as a possible help to?
Well, I think the
people?
biggest thing was the lack of correspondence when we did ask for help. They said, which we all probably realized, for kids to get a leg up, sometimes their parents have to help. And multiple people that did apply, they were rejected right away because they said, well, we don't want nobody getting a down payment and doing this. So actually one of the people that bought in there went their own way, got their money from the family and bought a unit. One of my bigger reasons was it was also see money come back into the city at some point in time, which might have been 5 years, 10 years, 25 years, because that contribution, part of that money would come back to the city to help fund projects. And that's why I'm recommending this large amount of money, because I want to see that. And I've spoken, previously to staff members here and stuff. We were looking at doing it at a larger project because I thought, hey, I employ a lot of people in and around Parksville. It'd be great to see them somehow be able to get into housing that they can't afford. They drive from Nanaimo, they drive from, the far side of Qualicum. So it's kind of sad that I think the biggest thing was they didn't have all the answers for me when we asked, can we have more literature? Because the realtors are saying we can't sell this. Banks are scared of it when they hear a second mortgage, and you can't put down a down payment. People are making enough monthly income, but they can't get the down payment together. So it just didn't work. And the communication was very lacking. And then even to the point where my lawyer said they're phoning me, asking me to put an agreement together. I work for you. They should supply us with the agreement. I'll review it and then let you know how acceptable it is or not. So I think maybe because it was a smaller project to them, it wasn't as important to handle it. I'm not sure. It just very, multiple realtors trying to get a hold of them, and it just didn't work out. It was just very awkward.
Well, thanks for kind of filling in the blanks,
Yeah.
and thank you for your effort in trying to make it happen, and also for your offer of the amenity contribution, anyways, that could be used by the city, anyways, for another affordable
Something
project,
else,
in some way and form. So I appreciate that. So
No
thank
problem.
you. Thank
Thank
you for
you.
the info.
Do we have any other questions for the delegation? Thank you, sir. We
Thank you, everyone.
certainly appreciate your efforts.
Thank you.
Now, we have another delegation, Mr. Beeld. Please present your OCP and zoning development amendment application for 457 and 489 Stanford Avenue East and 472 Island Highway East.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you for having us here. I'm Raymond DeBeeld from Raymond DeBeeld Architect. Just like to thank my staff as well who help out with this, and in particular Atta in our office. We're presenting this OCP amendment and zoning and development bylaw amendment on behalf of Harris Lancaster Investments. I'm not sure if Andy is here. I didn't quite see him, but if he is, he's certainly welcome to answer some of the questions as well. So just a really brief overview, and I'll take 2 or 3 or 5 minutes at the most. So maybe we can just go to the next slide, please. Just as a really brief overview, just in case you didn't get a chance to read through the notes or the agenda. It's a project for 2 4-story buildings for the existing property owners around Oceanside, Chevels, GM, and And the other property, just what you see to the bottom of below the highlighted kind of what looks like a key shaped lots. These were all originally lots that went from Stanford to Island Highway and vice versa. So they've had very different uses. So we'll talk about that in the next sheet. So this is to accommodate 2 4-story apartment buildings, 67 units, 56 units or so thereabouts, for a total of about 123 units. It also involves some minor adjustments because the way the current zoning is and the way the current OCP is on, and we'll see, I'll describe it a little bit more in the next slide, which may be a little bit easier to understand. So we've had a traffic study. We don't have any impact or negative impact on the 2 intersections to what would be the top of the sheet and the bottom of the sheet there. And likewise, we provide enough parking of approximately 1.28 stalls per unit, which is less than what the traffic consultant suggested was about 123 stalls. We have about 158 stalls. There's no underground parking in this because we're trying to make it relatively affordable. And we're trying to make it relatively modest. So it's not a high-end residential condo project or anything like that. It's basically trying to be suited to many different needs and users in the community. So we have everything from, studio, micro units. Hopefully that would be more affordable for people, all the way up to 1 and 2-story units. And perhaps we might be able to twist some arms given things that have changed since we started doing this in 2020. Maybe we'll look at a couple of 3-bedroom units or something as well. So affordability obviously is a key thing. So we're just careful because it's a dangerous word to use in public as well. So it means many different things to many different people. So also we're providing a contribution to the fire department, $800 per unit. So that totals about $98,000 as well. So again, just to highlight, it doesn't really have too much of financial impact on the city. The developer is paying for all the works and services and those kinds of things. And you can see there's an uplift of the property value, and that doesn't include the value of the buildings once they're constructed as well. So on the example on the left is kind of a superimposed existing zoning and the OCP. The OCP being in red is the commercial component, which is along the Island Highway or fronts the Island Highway, and on Stanford at the bottom of the sheet is the OCP for industrial service type uses. So that one's service commercial CS3. The highway commercial is CS1 up above. You're probably all familiar with these zones. They're a little bit different for me. And then we have the high density RHD4, which is multi-residential, which is what we're proposing. So as you can see, the shapes of the colored objects are a little bit different because there's some existing uses of the properties between the owners or their companies. And to the bottom of, maybe just to explain a little bit, to the bottom of the what's red that looks kind of orange in the slide here is the fleet service storage area for Oceanside GM. And it also provides an access way to their sales division of motorhomes, trailers, that kind of thing. And then on the yellow is where we're proposing the 2 buildings on either side, which is the existing industrial building, which has the agricultural, if I get the name right, agricultural service use that's there. So again, it's a very large open space building. So they're in a long-term lease with the owners. And I'm sure they'll be happy to keep them there. And if for some reason something changes in the future, that would be something that would become kind of maybe something more compatible uses related, somewhat commercial industrial, that maybe it's a cafe or much like you see down the road, some bars or some, not bars, but other amenities that would be valuable, or an activity center or daycare or something like that. Again, that's down the future. So it's very unique to have a large open space kind of warehouse type building. So we don't have a design for the building yet because we just thought it was a little bit premature, but again, we're just kind of focusing on the complexities of the land use and the zoning and the OCP and some of the variances that might be involved with that. So what we're trying to do is provide a mixed use kind of complete community where people can live and work close to where they work. So again, part of the reason why it's not high-end residential condos, the focus is on rentals. they don't want to commit to a super long term, but we're providing at least 50% for now on the record in terms of a 10-year rental on the properties. The idea being that, maybe as the owners retire or get older, maybe they want to sell some. Basically, whenever we have rental apartments, they're usually done as condos and then they stay rental for quite some period of time. But the idea is, the focus is, we got lots of people that live in or work in the resort area, work along service businesses and stuff along the island highway. So it'd be nice to have something that's relatively close to work for them, something they could walk to, and something that's obviously a little bit more affordable than prices of condos, and rental buildings are incredibly expensive right now. So, and everybody's feeling a pinch with inflation and stuff. So one of the things that makes it unique is that there is Tim Hortons, which is in between those two properties. And we're proposing to put a pedestrian connection between the residential multifamily area and connecting people so they can literally walk and get to the commercial businesses. So if they want to go to Timmy's or Starbucks or any of the other restaurants and businesses that are there, they're easy and convenient. So they don't have to rely on a car. And that's another reason why we're not trying to promote a car culture so much. So it's a bit modest that way. Lots of EV parking. Again, times are coming, we're banning gasoline new cars, even though the owners are in the car business, and obviously they're getting into EVs as well. Again, we're providing 25% installed and roughly everything else in. So this is getting to become quite common with new residential multifamily projects. There's software out there that can control how much power, because you'd almost need a power station if you had to power every single car, assuming that all was charging all at the same time while you were cooking dinner or something. So that's out there to deal with even existing apartment buildings.
I'm going to ask you if you could wrap it up.
Yep. I think one last slide. I think the last one is, we'll skip the massing stuff and we'll go to the landscaping one. So just affordability and community benefits. So basically high density housing, social economic diverse population, including people with disabilities, to focus on some accessibility units, universal units, trying to keep a lot of open space, and we're trying to encourage ultimate forms of transportation with pedestrian, and we're going to try and be energy efficient as possible. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Any questions for the delegation? Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, through you, Your Worship. Thank you, Mr. Beeld, for the presentation. You mentioned that you want to keep the units affordable, and affordability can be defined in many ways. But how are you going to do that? How are we going to know that they are affordable, or will this be decided, market decided?
It's market rates, but obviously if you have smaller units, it could be more affordable per unit. I think not putting underground parking is a big cost as well. So that being surface parking makes it more affordable that way. Not everybody needs to have a car, especially if you're able to be alternate forms of transportation, whether it's bikes or walking. Yeah, it's difficult. I mean, obviously it's a choice of selection. The very simple building shapes, I think it helps. Again, we're trying to orient it to be passively designed, so it's not huge. Utilities bills are a big component of everything now too. So there's different things you can do. So.
Can I have a follow-up, please? Thank you. So it's going to be more affordable for the builder to build rather than necessarily for the tenants.
I think it's going to be both.
Okay.
Yeah.
So right now in the package, it says that you're going to step code 3.
Yeah.
But that'll be mandatory by the end of the year.
Yeah. And then,
so, and if you want it to be really affordable, would you consider going up to step code 4?
that will, I mean, we're certainly
Which would be
looking at-
only 40% more efficient than the 20% that step code 3 is right now.
A caution
Just a
here,
thought.
caution here, this is not a development.
No,
permit
I realize,
application.
I realize, but
It's
we're
a
just talking
zoning-
still about some of the affordability issues and whatnot. So it's all part of making something perhaps more affordable for the people who are going to rent there, because their heating bills will be less. That's what the point was. Thank you.
Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you to the mayor and thank you for your presentation. Just a question, it's very unique shaped lot that you have, key shapes and so forth. I was unclear on one of your earlier slides, the orange section where it kind of went to orangey red
Yep.
type of thing. You had mentioned anyways, there's currently some RV dealership that's in there type of thing. Is that going to remain or is that going to be developed as well as part of your rental apartment and maybe in a phased approach to changing the commercial or?
That's really up to the owners. We're just concentrating ourselves on the multifamily component and the existing industrial warehouse building that's there. So what their plans are for long-term of that, I'm not sure. So
Okay, but it is all,
it's all owned by the same
okay,
3 owners, yes.
thank you.
Any other questions? All right, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it. We have one piece of correspondence from Mr. Vanderwolf. And I need a mover and a seconder for the recommendation that the correspondence be received. Councillor Chandler, seconded by Councillor O'Brien. Discussion? All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Correspondence from the Regional District of Nanaimo Communities, Northern Community Sewer Local Service Amendment Bylaw number 889.78. I need a mover and a seconder for the recommendations as outlined. Councillor Wilson, seconded by Councillor Greer. Discussion? Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Correspondence from P. Blomberg, the Beach Festival Society, appreciation of council support. I need a mover and a seconder to receive. Councillor Patterson, seconded by Councillor Wilson. Discussion? All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Correspondence is the letter that we spoke of at the beginning of the meeting from B. Mussatto from District Group for 1465 Greig Road Public Hearing Postponement Request. I need a mover and a seconder that the letter be received. Councillor Chandler, seconded by Councillor Wilson. And discussion? All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Reports. Mr. Russell. Sorry, did I miss something?
Sorry, if I may, your worship, if we could have direction from council on this item, I think whether council wants to defer it to the first meeting or a meeting in November for the next group, or whether we want to set a different date at this time.
I would, just my comment, council's open for discussion on this, obviously, but I think the first council meeting is probably going to be overwhelmed with new councilors and everybody on being brought up and so on. So I would suggest that if we're going to look at deferring this to the second meeting in November, that would probably be the smart play, but I'm open for that for a suggestion. Councillor Wilson, are you making that motion?
Sure, I'll make the motion.
Seconded by Councillor Greer. Discussion. Councillor Patterson and then Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, your worship. So I'm quite okay with moving to have it deferred till into November, but based on the letter received, they were looking at having the public hearing for December 5th. Is that correct? If I can
Yep.
get clarification from our CAO.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Thank you, if I may, your worship, through you to Councillor Patterson. The letter did request December, but I think what staff would recommend at this point that it be presented to the council on the second meeting of November, which would give that council group the opportunity to either set the public hearing date for December or seek additional information from staff or a summary report, depending on what that group looks like and what their knowledge of the sort of history of the file is. And so I think that gives the motion from Councillor Wilson gives the group of councillors sitting around this table on November, or whatever it would be, the opportunity to kind of just look at where we're at. And you can then either set the date for December, whatever it would be, the 6th or somewhere around there.
5th is what they're asking for.
Or choose a different date depending on the schedule of the councillors and the information that you have available. So I think that buys you enough time to give it due consideration.
I believe we can still meet their request if necessary. Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Your Worship. And to be clear, then that motion would have to be amended to say exactly that the November 5th date that was mentioned anyways, and the motion would just be for the council of the day. I believe it was November 5th. The council of the day has the ability at that time to set the new public hearing date. Doesn't necessarily have to be that date, just at that time they would have that decision to make.
Sure.
Sorry, if I may, Your Worship, through the council generally. I think what we had suggested was not your first meeting as a council.
Right.
So I believe that would be November 21st. So if we were to refer this item essentially to the November 21st council, at that time, council could decide to set the date for the public hearing in December, in January, or in any time, or to seek additional information or a summary report from staff kind of chronicling what has happened to date. So I think that gives you a fair amount of flexibility.
So the resolution today only has to specify that we're deferring this to the November meeting.
Thank you for clearing that up. That makes sense. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions on this? Call the question. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Sorry, Mr. Russell will finally get back to you.
Good evening, Your Worship and Council. First item I have is a follow-up report, a second follow-up report with respect to the VIP motel at 414 Island Highway West to facilitate a non-permanent supportive housing facility under a temporary use permit. So required notice has gone out in 2 editions of the Parksville Qualicum Beach News, as well as notice to property owners within 50 meters of the site. As of the beginning of this meeting, we've received a total of, I believe it's 11 pieces of correspondence, 4 opposed, 7 in favor. One of the 7 is from the proponent. At this point, Your Worship, there's an opportunity for members of the public in the gallery to speak to this application, and I would respectfully turn over the proceedings to you to allow folks to speak, and I will wheel over to the side.
Thank you very much for handing that over to me. I appreciate it. Now, as the director has indicated, we invite any individuals who wish to speak on this matter for the temporary use permit for 414 Island Highway West. So if there's anybody that wishes, please come forward to the microphone. I see somebody moving in the background there. Okay. Hello.
Kelly Robinson. I'm at 335 Sutherland Place. I don't know if we're within 50 meters of the, whatever you're calling it, but we didn't get any notice about or a chance to express our yay or nay, and it would be a definite nay. We feel that there is not already enough tourist accommodations in Parksville, and they're using a motel, a perfectly good motel, for a purpose it was not meant for. Also, when we bought our property in that area, we bought because of the feel of the area, it was motels, it was a fun place for kids to play at the Paradise. It's a nice neighborhood, and we did not buy thinking there would be an establishment for people with special needs right down the road. Also, we are concerned that this group may then further use their other buildings which are in that area for the same purpose. And we're totally against that, the whole thing being done. We don't agree with it at all.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your point of view. Looking for anybody else? Come on forward. If you could give us your name and your address, please.
Yes, my name is Warren Bezusko, 385 Sutherland Place in Parksville. In regards to this motel, we're located in that little court. We've had the police over so many times with transients coming through there. We have a young daughter, a granddaughter living with us. She's 9 years old. Neighbor has a little girl living next door to us as well. They're afraid to go outside on the street because of the character of the people that are going by. I'm not trying to judge them, but you know, we're finding needles down there all along the highway fence. I just put up a new fence and I'm still finding needles. The town was good enough to put up a fence between, a frost fence between the mini golf and our place, which our backyards touch each other. And I'm still phoning the police because people are jumping over the fence. I'm personally picking up all kinds of trash down in that gully. And I was told not to touch the stuff because they said, you got to wear gloves. We don't want you going down there. The point being, we weren't contacted at all. There was no information given to us as to what was going on in that hotel. And it's wrong. I mean, I'm not saying I don't want it in my neighborhood, but please let us know what the heck is going on. Just don't let them do this thing. That's it.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your point of view. Please, if there's anybody else, we would certainly be interested in hearing from you. I will ask for the second time. Okay. Name and address.
Hello, Mayor and Council. My name is John McEwen. I'm the Associate Vice President of Development Strategies at BC Housing. I'll keep it really short. I don't want to take too much time, but just wanted to reiterate that this is a temporary housing solution. We're committed to ongoing communication on our plan to find permanent housing for the individuals at the VIP, and are really just asking that Mayor and Council provide us an opportunity to work with the community of Parksville on the implementation of a permanent plan. We've been actively looking across the Oceanside area. And really this is just providing us time to work on a permanent plan, especially getting into the winter months and avoiding the displacement of individuals housed at the VIP motel into homelessness. I'll pass it off.
Mayor and Council, my name is Jennifer Fox. I've replaced Heidi Hartman as Regional Director for Vancouver Island Region BC Housing. Thank you for allowing us to be here today. And I just wanted to say we're committed to having open dialogue and conversation. And for any operational issues, you're welcome to come to me directly. Thank you.
Thank you.
I hate to say I have the last word here, Your Worship. Dr. Allison, Medical Health Officer. I live at 45 Nichols Street, Nanaimo. Don't put that in the news. Housing is a prerequisite for health and a determinant of health. And homelessness is a public health issue. Health Officers Council of British Columbia has come to a consensus statement about homelessness. There's a homelessness crisis currently in the province of British Columbia, and there's no escaping it here in Parksville. The crisis of homelessness in BC communities is also a health crisis, and that's why I'm here. Homelessness has an inequitable impact on people who are at risk of disease. And we've reported previously that the occupants that are supported at that supportive housing site really do have multiple medical concerns, and they're supported by health teams. Preventing and mitigating the impact of homelessness is a shared responsibility across sectors. Coordination of efforts requires societal prioritization and intention. We all have to agree that this is an important issue. The development of a spectrum of housing options in communities should be supported. And I look to my partners in BC Housing because I think there's a lot of work that we could do across a lot of our communities. And several communities are ready for that, trying to embark on what is a spectrum of housing and how do we meet that. Heard some really great ideas earlier. Also, the upstream investment in homelessness prevention initiatives are critical. So really trying to understand how we prevent homelessness. When you look at the data, we see that, you know, in a month or in a year in British Columbia, 30,000 plus people are homeless. But it really is almost a revolving door, and certain people, they become homeless and then they become homed and then become housing unstable or housing instability. And thank you, Councillor Wilson, for mentioning affordability. It's a really important component when we plan. So the Health Officers Council position statement on homelessness, equity, and health is as follows: that the current public health crisis in housing and homelessness affecting BC has an inequitable impact on disadvantaged individuals, undermining their physical and mental health. BC Health Officers Council urges the province of BC to undertake an intersectoral coordinated effort to develop a spectrum of housing options to meet the needs of all individuals across BC communities and to prioritize upstream investment in homelessness prevention. So I realize that this development wasn't implemented in the most ideal way, but at this point in time, it's housing vulnerable people. And I know that the team working in BC Housing is trying to find an alternate solution. So my advice to council would be to issue a temporary use permit. And then hopefully by March, we'll have a plan in place, because I know they're working really hard to achieve that. So I do have team members from the Community Health Services team here. If they have anything to add about the people that are being seen, of course, they can answer questions about that. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Right. Any other people from the audience? Mr. Drummond, would you please come forward and give us your name and address, please?
Paul Drummond, 568 Soriel in Parksville. I'm also the chair of the Parksville Qualicum Beach Tourism Association. We did submit a letter to Mayor and Council September 1st. I'd like to read that if I may, so the audience is aware. Please forgive me. Dear Mayor, Maine, and Council, I am writing on behalf of the Parksville Qualicum Beach Tourism Association Board of Directors to share concerns regarding the VIP motel's temporary use as a supportive housing facility. PQBTA concerns include, but are not limited to, the following: OCP misalignment. Parksville Qualicum Beach Tourism acknowledges the history and rationale for zoning the VIP motel and neighboring properties as tourist commercial. These properties make up one of the major visitor service and experience areas in the region. Rezoning the property to allow a supportive housing facility, even temporarily, sends a signal that the city supports drastically different use of tourist commercial properties. Just like to point out, 21 motel rooms, even at 50% occupancy, that's about 7,000 guests per year that could be spending money in our restaurants, in our shops, in our gas stations. So there is an economic impact to doing this and changing the zoning. Economic impact, as I just mentioned, allowing the VIP motel to operate as a supportive housing facility removes the 21 rooms from the area's availability. The results in thousands of visitors in the area who have eaten in restaurants, shops, and local retail businesses, taken in events, activities, or attractions. The neighborhood impact. Neighboring properties have told PQBTA that their businesses have been negatively impacted by the VIP motel's conversion to supportive housing facility. Like crime, both business and guest focused, drug trafficking, squatting, and loitering have all increased since supportive housing has been offered in the area. The fourth, visitor experience impact. Further to the neighborhood impact pointed above, increasing crime, drug trafficking, squatting, and loitering negatively impacts the experience of thousands of visitors staying in adjacent hotels, taking in Paradise Fun Park, and dining in local restaurants. Negative visitor experiences not only affect individual guests, but also deteriorates the area's reputation when shared with friends, family, review sites, and social media in today's connected world. We do recognize the efforts to support people in need. PQBTA asks Mayor and Council to focus on supporting people in need via dedicated facilities like Orga Place, rather than allowing tourist commercial properties to be misused and in breach of the city's OCP, resulting in the above listed concerns. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your point of view. Anybody else that wishes to speak? Councillor Greer?
Thank you, Your Worship. I think we all appreciate the fact that we have a homeless problem and everybody feels very bad about that situation. However, I think the problem will only get worse. And the question I have for BC Housing is why they picked Parksville and why all the downtown locations right in the middle of our community. As anyone knows that has been traveled to big cities, anytime there's a collection of people in one area, that area just certainly deteriorates over a period of time. And I'm wondering why Parksville is left with the burden to look after all these people. I think this should be shared throughout the island, Central Island, Qualicum Beach, Coombs. There's lots of areas. But why they all come to the downtown of Parksville, I question that situation. Our downtown will only deteriorate over time. Thanks.
Thank you. Before we go any further, I think probably the best way to handle this is let's make it as a motion, and then we can carry on the discussion with council. So first off, we need two recommendations. One is that we receive the report from the Director of Community Planning, and then secondly, upon consideration of public comment received, council issue a temporary use permit to the parties named therein in order to facilitate a supportive housing facility on a non-permanent basis until March 31st, 2023, subject to the terms and conditions of the permit. Is there anybody that's prepared to make those? Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Your Worship. I so move both of those recommendations and motions.
You're moving them. I need a seconder, Councillor Patterson. Now we're open for discussion. Councillor O'Brien, you get first shot since it's your motion.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Worship. This motion is actually to reiterate, and it was read pretty quick, anyone that doesn't have it on the agenda. It's to approve the temporary use permit until, a temporary use permit on a non-permanent basis until March 31st, 2023, subject to the terms and conditions of a temporary use permit. So what this is saying is that from this point on, approximately 6 months, this temporary use permit expires. At no time will this property have they applied to be rezoned. This is a temporary use permit only. The problem is this whole situation that enveloped the VIP motel was done in a terrible fashion. And I'm sorry, there's nowhere else I can lay the blame on, but that would be BC Housing. So the thing is that they've taken these individuals that needed housing and they flagrantly disobeyed a bylaw that said that it was not suitable for that. They actually came in and did it, knowing full well that this bylaw already said that this was not a suitable location. That's not good community participation. That's not collaboration with the community. And furthermore, the decision to put these people, as Sandra has mentioned anyway, said they have multiple health issues. And this location, quite frankly, is on a 4-lane highway. It's super dangerous and it's right in the middle of the tourist area type of thing, so has a huge impact on the existing businesses that we have legally operating by the current bylaw zoning that's there. They've located them there where they're putting their own clients at risk. I've seen the clients coming out of there and jaywalking across to the other side of the street. And it's literally, it's just a gong show as to when something tragic is going to happen to these individuals. So it was a terrible choice, a terrible decision, but we're faced with this. And now these individuals are here. These individuals are here because it's the only place that BC Housing could find to put them. Do not have an appetite at this time to take these individuals and say, as of now, as of tonight, We're not going to approve this temporary use permit. We are advising that it's a bylaw infraction of use, and so the owner would be subject to fines immediately if he continued to abuse this. I don't want to see these people on the street. I've seen their operation, and I know they've done their best to try and get it. They even have a community garden in there. They're growing tomatoes and lettuce and stuff. So they're trying to help these individuals that need help. We all get that. But at the same time, I think that we've already put up with this for as long as we have. And as Mr. Drummond pointed out, it was through the tourist season. And that space was sadly missed because, you know, so many businesses were just bouncing out of COVID and we needed more hotel space. So many jobs dependent on that. And those 21 rooms were lost. We're coming into maybe not such a busy season anymore. I'm suggesting that if we give them another 6 months, and maybe BC Housing could find housing before that time. Because what I'm saying, in 6 months, BC Housing, it's over at that site. It's over. It's not appropriate and it's not over. The thing is that we will shut it down. But at this particular time, I think we have to show some compassion to the individuals that are actually staying there. And I totally feel for the residents in the area. I know I've seen it is. And with what we find with any, if it's a supportive housing project, or if this is like a supportive housing project, almost like Orchid Place, there is always a percentage of individuals that become unhousable. And this is through various reasons. But what has happened at Orchid Place, which has done an amazing job at fitting into our community, even at Orchid Place, is faced with the terrible task of either evicting a current tenant because they're unhousable, because they pose a threat to themselves or for the staff. They have habits that are not befitting the place, and they get evicted. But the thing is that happens. And then they have another policy, which isn't really a policy, but it doesn't show in their evictions, but they have other people that are asked to leave because they're not suitable. They're not actually evicted, because evicting anybody is a long and arduous process. But these other individuals that are not suitable for this housing complex, they're asked to leave, and they do. But there is no plan by BC Housing or the ICCS or whoever is running these things is to do something with those people that are evicted or asked to leave. Those people now get asked to leave, they're out on the streets. They're not happy and they're not behaving properly. They didn't behave properly in what was a really great place to live. They're out on the streets and they're stealing and they're threatening people and they're causing neighborhoods great harm. And that's not right. And so I say as well, BC Housing, why do you not have a place for these individuals to go? Because a lot of them weren't even from Parksville. And now they're evicted out onto the street and they're in Parksville now. And so the thing is that they do what they do to survive with their mental health and addiction that they're facing. So it's tough. But in the meantime, you've let down our community. You've let down all these people here, the businesses. You've let down the people that live in that neighborhood. You've let down the workers that work in these places because they are in harm's way an awful lot. I know you're trying to help. And let me reiterate my whether it's 5% or 10%, I don't know. But there's some. We know who they are.
Councillor O'Brien, can I ask you to wrap it up, please?
Sure, I will. But the thing is that this is a very sensitive situation here. So that's why I'm supporting allowing them to stay for 6 months with a full understanding that after that time, BC Housing has to, or before that time, if you can, find another location to house these vulnerable people.
Thank you. Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Your Worship. So I sympathize with the residents of Sutherland Place. I live just off of Moliette. Public record, I live on Banks. And that, which is just outside of that notice and everything of residents that would have known about the temporary permit. We did discuss it in the past when we declined the, at that time, the temporary permit, and that's why it's coming back again now. I'm concerned that what's going to happen in March, like the residents that are there, some of them do have health concerns. Some of them are great. As I said, I live in the area. I've stopped. My favorite restaurant in Parksville is Calvis, and I've had conversations and that with the owner, and so I know definitely some of the concerns and the problems that they've experienced in the area. I go down. I buy the VIP minimum 2 times a day because I go to work that way. So parking is an issue when you see other vehicles that aren't in the VIP area, but you know that that's where they're frequenting. And I fully believe that a lot of the residents that are there currently are not to blame for the issues that are occurring in the neighborhood. I believe it's the people that are visiting or perhaps trying to encourage that illegal drug use that's happening and everything there. I believe that there are good people, and I believe that the housing is definitely needed. I don't agree on how it occurred, obviously. I don't think anyone at this table does. But there are some good aspects, and one was mentioned about the gardens and that, and even coming to council tonight, there was barbecues going. You could see that it was a very much an environment of collaboration, of knowing your neighbors, which I'm sure some of us may not all know who our neighbors are next door to us anymore. So there are some good aspects, but I really do believe that there's also a health crisis happening in BC, and that really needs to be addressed. It's mental health that tends to affect a lot of the homeless issues that we're seeing. And in Parksville today, you're not seeing what we would have said in the past was middle class or low income or higher income. We're having a bigger and bigger split of wages and being able to live in a community. And I don't want to take a whole lot of time because there's other people around the table that I know want to speak as well. I don't agree on the way that this property changed into the temporary use permit of supportive housing. I really do wish that we could have been partners in something great. Like Orca Place, that's, it's had its challenges. It most definitely has. But the VIP has had just as many, if not more so. I'm going to support based on the fact of it being a non-permanent basis. And I'm really hoping that BC Housing will come to the table with Parksville City Council to work for something in the future so that the residents that are there currently know what's going to happen, that they don't have this sense of dread and non-knowledge of what's going to happen in March. So those are my comments.
Thank you. Councillor Chandler and Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, through your worship. Just some comments. Firstly, anybody that knows me knows that that I have a brother that's a senior, and he's quite often homeless. He lives on the downtown east side. He'd be the first to agree that what we're dealing with isn't a homelessness issue, it's an addiction and mental health crisis. I think as soon as the province of British Columbia and the federal government decide to treat this as the health emergency that it is, I think we'll start to realize that homelessness will start to get a little bit of stability. We're certainly seeing that there's other people that are on the borderline of being homeless. But I think a large percentage of what we're seeing as far as the SROs and all of the different locations that require housing, people that are on the streets, people living in the bush, people living in cars, et cetera, are typically, a large number of them are addicted and have mental health issues. So I mean, once we get that under our belt, I think BC Housing needs to take a much larger role in trying to mitigate that as opposed to perpetuating it. And I think it's been going on for way too long. We've had multiple years of this. It's not working. It's not working downtown in Vancouver. It's not working in Victoria or Nanaimo. And it certainly is starting to take root here in Parksville and different areas. So although I'm a proponent of having something for my brother, he lives over there, so it's not available to him, but this kind of thing would be great for him. I think it'd be fantastic, a great opportunity. He's a working drug addict. He goes out every day and works. But the problem is that he's been at it for 14 years. So something's wrong. Something's seriously wrong. We don't have an opportunity to move people out of these locations because they're extremely comfortable. They're getting 3 meals a day. They're not being focused on some future opportunities. So, I mean, these are just my thoughts on this. I sympathize with the local businesses. I've seen what's going on in the downtown core of Morrison and areas like that, the Salvation Army. There's garbage, there's clothing everywhere. A lot of it is, unfortunately, the local homeless population that's there filling up their carts and cruising around town with mental health issues with 4 or 5 giant carts full of stuff. It's just absolutely crazy. What we need to do is we really need to help those people. We need to help them in a proper facility. And I think it's super important that BC Housing starts to understand that a motel in the middle of town, taking away potential rooms for people that want to stay, has created 2 things. It's created an issue where now rooms in this town are $250 a night. It's absolutely ridiculous. Where we used to have rooms in here for $90 a night. In fact, I stayed at the VIP hotel on 2 or 3 different occasions. During those times, the rates were really reasonable. Now they've skyrocketed. One of my biggest concerns, if we were to allow this scenario, is that what happens with the other 3 hotels that are owned by the same group? It's a big concern. And again, we're going to see more hotels purchased by this group because it makes sense. The opportunity for BC Housing to take over some of these locations or to make it very solid appetite for the owners to jump on board is dollars. It's our dollars. It's tax dollars. It's not BC Housing's dollars. So I think it's important that we understand that. My biggest problem with this whole thing was we started out with a project that was basically very shady, snuck in behind our backs. Even the local MLA was silent on it. BC Housing was silent on it. We felt like we had a good partnership with BC Housing. I think that's completely fractured. I think BC Housing has done a terrible job and they've put everybody in this situation. It's not really council that's dealing with this. We're not creating this issue. This is created solely by BC Housing. So long and the short is we need to look at all sides of it. I won't support this. I won't support it just simply because I don't believe that anything will happen in March of 2023. I don't believe that we're going to see any change. I think that we're going to see this being railroaded through again. And what we need to do is send a message to BC Housing that they need to fix this. They were supposed to fix this months ago, long ago. We've had millions of dollars come into the community through the federal government, through our province, and nothing has been really done except we've seen a bunch of motels being purchased and people housed in these motels. So anyways, I won't go on. Obviously, I won't support this, and although I do support the homeless community. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Your Worship. And through you, I just want to say to Councillor Chandler that I'm going to pick up on where you left off. And I appreciate what Councillor Patterson and O'Brien said, but I would like to address something that Councillor O'Brien said, that it's 6 months and it's over. There is a clause that they can renew once. And I would suspect that that's exactly what they're going to try to do. Where do I even begin with this? Another issue is, of course, as Councillor Chandler said, the surrounding properties that this owner may decide to enter an agreement with. But I think going back to the renewing the lease, knowing BC Housing, knowing they weren't in compliance, as they did in 2021, all businesses and residents are required to be in compliance with their zoning. People just can't go out and do whatever they want and ask for forgiveness later. It just doesn't work like that. BC Housing knows this, and they are putting this problem on this council, which is quite unfair. And the other thing I want to say is that there is a letter that BC Housing sent to the residents of the VIP, and I will just read the part that says, in the event that the TUP is not provided by the City of Parksville, we may need to vacate the VIP motel and move residents to a new location. This is not our preferred option, but if this is the case, we will keep you informed of any news on this. We will find new housing options, and our volunteers will be able to help you move your belongings. Individuals will not be displaced to the street without housing options being provided. BC Housing is known since 2019. They promised a shelter. They've been promising that they would look after this issue. They have not done a thing. And I also have another note from staff that says that they have offered for the past 3 years, and BC Housing has refused the sites at BC Housing for this sort of housing, and they've refused it. I guess the other thing is, I just can't ignore the letters from the PQBTA, the Chamber, and Calvis, and other people who are opposing this for supportive housing. It's so negative on the businesses. Tourism, crime, theft, loitering, drug trafficking, it just isn't right. Not in our downtown. And I think that Councillor Greer said, why is it always in Parksville? Why not? Why are the other communities not picking up the ball? And I'd like to actually ask BC Housing, why don't you go to these communities? You're calling this Oceanside, you want to put it in Parksville, and you keep putting this on Parksville. It's not fair. I'm sorry, this is just not fair to anybody, not to the people who are living in these motels or the city, the residents who have to pay the taxes here. It just isn't fair. The businesses that are suffering. So yes, I agree with Councillor Chandler. This is unsupportable. I do not believe that these people will be thrown out by any means. What it'll mean is that BC Housing will be fined, and they seem to have a lot of money to spend on motels, so I'm sure that they can pay the fines, but the people won't be thrown out. And will BC Housing step up to the plate, maybe, and get the message that this is not the way you do business? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Okay. You want to speak? Go ahead, then I'll do last.
Thank you. Through your worship to council, I just want to share some of my thoughts for your consideration on this decision too. Been listening to everybody's comments, and one common thing that I'm hearing is the lack of confidence in BC Housing and the unappreciative nature that they began this process. But as I look back over the years that we've had dealing with BC Housing, I would say that the way that they've operated in the past is the way they've continued to operate. The lack of communication, we hear that from other developers, not just our own relationship with them. The lack of transparency, having no plan in place, that they operate outside of compliance. They provide conflicting information. In our last presentation we had from them, even their literature, it doesn't line up with what they say. One of my items I brought up last time, I thought the 50 meters for notice was too small. And I realized that it was, to be fair, because that's how we always apply it for anyone of this nature. They kept the 50 meters. The difference being is this is someone that's continued to operate outside of compliance with the bylaw. So I think there was room to extend that, because what we see, that 50 meters didn't even cross the street, where definitely neighborhoods have concerns about it. We heard that there was 7 letters in favor, and I know those come from operators like BC Housing as well, in that as opposed to, for example, the 4 that we had as opposed letters come in from large groups like the Tourism Association that represents our entire community, or the Chamber, our entire community. And I think if we had extended that notice to large neighborhoods, because I know I've been speaking to people in over 50 meters away, a few blocks away, and the negative effects are very real. It's not just that, I read these letters of support as we think it's a good idea, versus the ones that don't are saying there's been real impacts to them that harms their enjoyable and peaceful living in the community. And that's who I think we're here to represent as well. Found that even with their supportive housing in place right now, I'm still seeing a lot of the individuals who are staying there still out begging on the streets, still with their old behaviors out in the streets and creating nuisances out there, despite having a place to live, a place to eat, and so on. And so I really question about what the effect of that supportive housing is having. One of the concerns that BC Housing brings up of why this is so needed right now for us to give them this temporary use permit is to avoid displacement of the residents. And I mean, I think we've heard this many times before. They say, we're housing 20 people in there. We don't want to just kick them out in the street. But I've also seen that as someone moves on, they refill that spot as well, and they continue on with the intakes. So the idea that they don't want to put those people out in the lurch, well, in March when their permit comes up, of course, I think they will absolutely renew, but they're always going to have people that are going to say, if we don't do something more here and we don't keep this going, we're going to leave them out in the lurch, because they're continually filling those spots. I think if they were genuine in this being a temporary, non-permanent solution, as they move people on to other housing situations, they wouldn't keep the intakes going. They would leave that building, let it fade out, so that, and then move on to what their other plan is. But as you heard, they don't have a plan in place. And it goes back to how they've operated before. It's how they continue to operate. They don't have a plan in place. I don't have faith that they're going to have a plan in place, even come up in March. So those are concerns for me of is there merit behind a temporary use permit? I think what they're asking for here doesn't line up with what they're saying they're really going to do. So I'm not in favor of the permit for that reason. I think if we had more confidence and faith in them, then perhaps we could, but we've all heard that saying, the thin edge of the wedge. I think this is exactly what's been going on here. They get in, they operate out of compliance. They ask them for a little bit more compliance, and then they just push it more and more and more. So that's why, for me, I'm not going to be supporting this temporary use permit.
Thank you, Councillor Fraz. I will make the comments here as well. Gosh, it's really impressive to see the amount of lack of trust in BC Housing, that the hole that they've dug in this situation is unbelievable. First off, we're talking about March 31st upcoming, but we forget that March 31st in 2022, we were told they were going to leave then, and that there was going to be no problem. Oh yeah, we've got this all fixed and we're going to move our people to someplace else. Blew right past March 31st, 2022 and kept it going. And then they said, oh, well, we'll stay until March 31st, 2023. My greatest concern here, there's a number of things, obviously. I can't support this motion the way it's written right now, but I have the deepest amount of sympathy for 21 individuals that are standing there knee deep, on something that they had nothing to do with. They were shoved into those places and said, here, you have this nice place to live. And BC Housing just said, there you go, don't worry about it, we'll take care of it. And they just left those people out to no end. That's beyond belief that somebody can do that and get away with it. Somebody that thinks they have that much arrogance to be able to do this is beyond me. My question is, what's going to change March 31st, 2023? Let's say we give them their temporary use permit. Come around March 31st, they're going to sit and say, oh, you know what? We still don't have another place. I mean, after all, they've been doing this since 2019. And every 6 months we hear, well, we don't have another place, so we've got to do this. We don't have another place, so we've got to keep them there. And that's been going on and on and on without anything being corrected. So what's going to happen in 2023? We're going to be right back here, sitting here saying, whoa, what's going on? What are you doing? We don't have to, by the way, we do not have to provide them with an extension to go an extra year on a temporary use permit. We can say, no, you've got the temporary use permit and it expires on March 31st, 2023, period, end of sentence, doesn't go any further. There is no further extension on that. There's the first point. So that would be the first thing I'd want to see in a temporary use permit if we approved it. Secondly, I want something in writing, and I want something in writing by somebody that's got a little authority, not somebody that can carry some weight here that says, we promise we will vacate this property on March the 3rd, by March the 31st, 2023, come hell or high water, no excuses. The people will be taken care of and not put out on the street. They will be taken care of, period. That's what we need here, those type of assurances. And if not, I don't know what the ramifications are. How big of a fine can we levy to somebody, to an operation? Can we levy a fine if they don't vacate by March 31st, 2023? Can we make up a fine? Can it be $200,000 if they don't do it? What is there a limit to it? I'm asking the CAO because I don't know. I've never even thought about this before, but this is crazy. Yeah, I'm asking you.
Thanks.
I'll put you on the hot spot.
So if I may, your worship, yes, we do have fining provisions for zoning contraventions. It's
Right.
nowhere near the amount that you've mentioned.
Is it limited? Does it
Yes.
say in the act that it's limited?
Well, there are certain avenues that we have, to consider in terms of, there's an ability to do new day, new infraction, new fine. We don't do that very often, but it is, you can do that. So off the top of my head, our fines range from, they're basically all kind of under $500 a day, and that's for the more serious. They range from about $50 for a parking ticket type fine to $500, which is one of our higher ones. There's injunctions, there's other avenues in front of us. And so generally speaking, fining isn't always the best deterrent, depending on the situation, but we have a bylaw that stipulates what the fines are for different infractions, and that's what we would be following in a bylaw.
Next question then, and I'm sorry for delaying this, but just for a couple more. If we said, no, you can't have this temporary use permit, but we're not going to throw the people out on the street, so to speak, which is what they're hanging over our heads, unfairly, I might add, but they're hanging that over our head. And can we fine them on a daily basis from here forward, or from the day that they moved in forward for non-compliance?
I would get legal advice on how exactly we would go about that before giving council the definitive answer, but council does not have to enforce this bylaw. So there's options there to sort of not approve something, but not enforce the bylaw. That's kind of how council dealt with this at first. There was a period of time where BC Housing was preparing the application to bring forward to council. And so council may recall, we got direction to hold the enforcement in abeyance while that process happened. And that was a period from about sort of October, November timeframe off the top of my head, until we got the application completed, which was maybe February timeframe, I'm thinking. So there are a few options, but I think just kind of off the cuff here, I would be hesitant to answer all of them for council at this point because it is such a complicated matter. But there's a number of different ways that we deal with enforcement. Fining is one. As I mentioned, there are opportunities to do new fine, new day, which can get costly for a normal situation, like a normal business owner, obviously. $500 a day can get quite expensive quite quickly. But we do have other bylaws as well that may apply depending on the situation. And so I think in this particular case, we would probably, if council wanted to commence enforcement again, we would usually discuss that with our solicitors on what's the
Okay.
best different avenues. that
Thank
we
you.
have.
You can sense my frustration on this, and that's why I'm asking these questions with open-ended as they are. But I can't support this with a finite March 31st, 2023 without some sort of guarantee that this is going to end and it's not going to go on any further regardless. So, and I would also not be in any position to approve this if it is well, let's just leave it at the March 31st, 2023 at this point in time. I think that probably is significant enough that we've got to figure that out. I don't know. Councillor Greer asked me today in my office what I thought about this particular one. And I said, you know what, I've changed my mind 3 times on this just in the one day. Gone for it, gone against it, gone for it, gone against it. This is in the 4 years that we've been here, this is the hardest question I've had put in front of me because the people of these 21 people are being held out there as, yeah, it just through no fault of their own. And I don't know at this. I'm still interested in hearing more from council on this. So I'm going to stop talking now. Thank you. Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you. If I may have a question for Mr. Russell. Councillor Wilson mentioned that there is a clause to review or renew once after. Is that absolutely true? And is that applicable in this case?
If Mayor Worship through to Councillor O'Brien, it's actually in legislation that it can be reissued by council. So it's council as a body prior to it lapsing would need to make the decision whether or not to grant that extension, basically reissuance for an extended period. It's also my understanding that the term cannot exceed the term of the original permit.
Thank you. And so, so much as the fact that we're saying that the termination date is March 21st, the only way that date could be extended would be council recommendation to offer a renewal. So it would be up to us or council of the day to renew that or not.
If
So it's council's decision. They just can't automatically say, we want an extension.
If Mayor Worship through to Councillor O'Brien, that's absolutely correct. Council of the day will have to reissue the permit or not.
Right. Then we have our guarantee. Thank you.
Councillor Chandler.
Thank you, through your worship. Just, hearing comments around the table, I appreciate all the views and I think we all sort of, in some ways, we're all struggling with this, but I think the biggest component here is that people aren't going to be thrown out on the streets. BC Housing are going to do their thing. They're going to do what they should have done for the last 3 years. And I think it's incumbent on them to do that. I think we should definitely, in my eyes, I'm turning down this scenario of extending to the March 31st of 2023. I just don't feel that we need to, and we don't owe BC Housing anything in this case. I think they've come to the table with nothing for us. They've basically done what they've done here, and they put us in a real bad situation. So I would really like to see this come to an end today and in this vote, and would be that's my opinion. Thank you.
Councillor Greer.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think we've discussed this long enough. I don't think we can trust BC Housing. I think we've been dealing with this far too long. A decision has to be made, and I'd like to call the question on this.
Are you calling the question? He's just called the question. Ask him if you'll rescind that. He called the question. I can't override it. Pardon? I know, but he's called it. The rules say that once you've called the question, once somebody in council calls the question, it has to be put to the floor. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I'm right on this one. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I am. Yep. I'm not even sure if it needs to be seconded. Do we have an answer to the question?
So if I may, your worship, it says, that's the previous question, Amanda, though, 21. We might just have to search it in our, apparently our procedure bylaw is too long.
It's a good question, Councillor O'Brien.
Yes, it is.
I don't have the answer for you at this point.
If I may, your worship, could I suggest that in the interest of just asking one more comment and stifling the debate, would it not just be better to have a full and appropriate decision? We're trying to come to consensus here. And that's what we're all trying to do. We're all trying to do the right thing. But what is one more comment is that really, is that the end of the world? That Councillor Greer is insisting on stifling further debate? I don't know. Is it really?
Well, I think it is. I think we've discussed it now.
Hold on, let's not debate the debate here. Let's wait and see.
Well, I
Let's
think
see what
we've-
they say on calling the question.
Can you find it, Amanda? Sorry, if I may, I can find every other scenario in terms of calling for yays and nays. After the questions.
I will call the answer myself if you can't come up with an answer.
And
Yeah.
Once the question has been called.
yeah, but may I speak?
To me directly, yes.
To the chair.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Yes. It would not make sense that any member of council could call the question at any time, because even after the motion has been seconded, and we traditionally let the motion presenter speak first, after that time, then anybody on council could just say, that's enough, I've heard enough, call the question.
I think
You got to
if
speak.
Does it actually say only after everyone has
Yes.
spoken once, twice, three times, or I've never seen that?
Yeah, if I may,
We've
I
used
can't
it
find it at the
twice
moment,
that
but
I remember.
I think that in not being able to find it right away, I think in most situations, we would, like, for items that are not debatable, like deferrals and referrals, we usually put that to a vote. So if we can't find it here in proper order, that would probably be the
If we
solution.
can't, if you can't find it right now, I'm going to call a recess of 5 minutes.
Okay.
And I'll get the answer.
Because it may not be in here. We may have to refer to Robert's rules if we
That's where
don't
I'm
have that
going.
in here. So
Yeah.
normally that would be, I think what you would do is just put it to a vote, but if we can take a 5-minute recess,
I
we
will.
can search. it
Counselor
on our
Patterson, do
digital.
you have something
Thank
to
you,
add?
Your Worship. With Robert's Rules of Order, a single member cannot force the end of debate. Also interrupting by yelling or calling out question or call the question is not appropriate. It has to be made by obtaining the floor like other motions.
He did have the floor.
You would have to vote on whether to.
That's fine. I'm not debating that part at this point in time. He has called it. That's why I stopped it at that point. Now, the next question for this would be, is there a second? If we have a seconder to call the question, that's really where it goes to. You're seconding it? Okay, so now it's seconded. Now we have to vote, and the majority of council will have to approve it. All right, for calling the questions. Everybody following so far? All those in favor of calling the question? Opposed? But it showed that Councillor Patterson and Councillor O'Brien have voted negatively on this. All right, and the question is called. So now we're at the question. We're calling the question. You can't speak anymore. All right, so now I'm going to call this question. Are we going to?
Your Worship, may I
Yes.
ask a question at this point in time?
Sure.
To you or through you? Based on the recommendation, at this point in time, could we? I've heard many things around the table and everything tonight. Whether we change the recommendation at this time,
You want to make an amendment?
except I don't have one.
Okay. Yeah, we have to vote on this question. If it gets turned down, then you're more than welcome to make a change. We're calling the question. To calling the question? Go
Yes.
ahead, please.
No, actually, the question is in regards to Councillor O'Brien's motion, correct?
Yes, it's point 2, I think is what we're debating.
Correct. Yeah, I just want to clarify
Point
that.
1's not a discussionable thing. We can split them if you wish, but it doesn't accomplish anything. Yeah, you can still split after that. All right, so we've got recommendation 1, recommendation 2. We're calling the question. All those in favor of both recommendations? Opposed? It has been turned down. The temporary use permit has been declined. Thank you. Mr. Russell, please.
If I may, Your Worship, this is a rezoning application. It was presented as a delegation earlier. It is located at 243 Corfield Street South. The proposal is, as highlighted in the presentation, is to amend the zoning bylaw to allow for a total of 5 dwelling units without the requirement of being part of the province's affordable home ownership program. And the recommendations are per the agenda.
Thank you. I need a mover and a seconder for the motion. Moved by Councillor Wilson, seconded by Councillor Chandler. Discussions. Councillor Wilson, you're up first. You wish to speak to the motion? Uh-oh, she spilled water.
I did. I spilled my water.
Okay, that's fine. You have the first option. Councillor Chandler is second. No, all right. Go ahead.
Thank you. And through your worship to the Director of Planning. So we heard from the delegation earlier about the issues they were having with BC Housing in this regard, just kind of initiating them to want to get out of this AHOP program. Is there any opportunity to speak to BC Housing and find out if they have any plans to make amendments, recognizing what's been going on? Like, I've only heard one side of the story and I sympathize with them, but I don't feel like I have all the information. recognize this is just about advancing it to public hearing at this point to get some public input. But through that process, will we have an opportunity to speak to BC Housing and ask them some questions about the faults of this program that we've uncovered?
If I may, Worship, through to Councillor Fraz, I think it's whether or not BC Housing will comment on this specific application as part of the public consultation process that the public hearing will unfold. I don't know. I can't speak for them. Outside of that program, outside of this application, certainly council can speak to to the BC Housing about the AHOP program to understand what the complexities of it are.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're just moving it to the next level. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. Mr. Russell, keep going, please.
There we go. Sorry, I lost one of my tabs. The next application was also appeared as a delegation. It is an OCP amendment and rezoning application. This is at 3 properties at 457 and 489 Stanford Avenue East and 472 Island Highway East. This application involves primarily rezoning a portion of the site to facilitate 2 4-story apartment buildings. And there's also a component of sort of housekeeping, adjusting the part of the highway commercial zone to sort of match the proposed parcels. And then at this stage, basically the applicant would be taking it forward to do their public engagement, holding an open house, and the recommendations are per the agenda.
Thank you. At this point in time, who's the deputy mayor at this point in time? Councillor Wilson. I'm going to ask Councillor Wilson to take the chair. I'm going to recuse myself from this discussion and this vote. And the reasons for that is twofold. One is that one of the pieces of this property is where my campaign headquarters is located on. And secondly, it's immediately adjacent to the Tim Hortons store, for which I have very close relationships. So I would think that it would be the proper thing to do is to recuse myself, and I will let Councillor Wilson take the chair at this point in time.
All right, so we're seeing nothing.
Do we have a mover and a seconder?
No.
Blaine, do this, please. So just get a mover and a seconder for that.
Do I have a mover and a seconder? So Councillor Patterson and Councillor Chandler. Thank you. Do you want me to read that? Discussion? Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Worship. And I know that this is at beginning stages, but I do appreciate the delegation giving us some feedback and everything prior to the recommendations on the agenda and everything tonight. I can see where a lot of tidying up of the through road and everything from the property onward to the highway makes sense. And those are my comments. Like I said, I do appreciate the thought process of not underground parking and allowing for the units to be not high end and perhaps more affordable. Thank you.
Any other comments? Councillor Chandler.
Thank you, through your worship. I also support this. I think it's going to be a project that's worthwhile. You know, obviously moving it forward to the next stage, I think is really important. But ultimately, it's something we need in this town. I think we need to add more housing. There's no question. So it's a great project. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor O'Brien.
And thank you. And through the chair, I will be supporting this motion, mainly for the fact that I'm appreciative of the fact that this is increasing downtown densification. It's close to downtown, and it's what it's going to encourage more transportation friendly, like bicycle and pedestrian access to the downtown, and actually it may help even the downtown businesses as well. So I absolutely will be supporting this application.
Thank you. Councillor Fraz.
Thank you through the deputy mayor to council. I think this is an appropriate one to be advancing at this point for public input as well. I'm definitely encouraged about the type of housing they talk about, and as the points mentioned there, location for the type of housing. I like the connectivity to the community and the stores they were talking about. So there's some cool aspects with it as well, kind of making it its own little neighborhood hub in there. So I would looking forward to seeing how the community responds to it, and once the plans evolve a little bit more as well.
Thank you. No further questions. I did have a question for our director of planning. I think this is a good idea as well, and I believe it fits well within Plan Parksville, this sort of development.
So this is requiring an amendment to the OCP to facilitate the multi-use, but it is supported by policies that talk about walkable communities where, where automobile dependence is less part of the equation because it's walkable. So this would clearly be walkable to businesses in both the immediate area. It's also with the path they're proposing through the site, it would be within easy access of public transit.
Thank you. I wanted you to answer that. So no further question or comments or questions. I'll call the question. All those in favor? It's passed unanimously.
Okay, if I may, Your Worship, next application for council consideration is a follow-up report. This is for the rezoning amendment application at 625 and 633 Pioneer Crescent to facilitate a small lot residential development. In this case, the properties are currently zoned single-family residential, and the applicant is proposing to rezone it to small lot residential SLR1 zone to facilitate a future subdivision. In this case, should the rezoning ultimately be approved, it would facilitate potentially 10 Bearland strata lots. Since this application was last before council, the applicant has undertaken a public information meeting that they hosted on August the 9th this year. It was held from 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. They placed an ad in the Parksville Qualicum Beach News, as well as delivered notices to surrounding properties in the neighborhood. And the comments, there were 16 persons who signed in attendance. One comment sheet was submitted. Further details were provided in their summary. Recommendations are per the agenda.
Thank you. I'm prepared to take all four recommendations. Four recommendations is one. Councillor O'Brien, second by Councillor Greer. Discussion. All those in favor? Oh, you okay.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Just a question for Mr. Russell. I noticed that the developer has proposed also an amenity contribution. Did he not? Can we discuss that right now? Okay, I'm just not letting out any secrets. Is all I guess.
So, sorry, I may be misunderstanding.
No, the developer proposed that they were going to make a contribution to the Shelley Park for playground equipment as an amenity contribution.
That's my understanding, correct?
Right,
Yes.
and so my only comment was going to be to recognize that offer to the Shelley Park and appreciation to that, as well as increasing more small lot subdivision, our attempt to try to make more affordable housing. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, all righty. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Mr. Russell, present your report on consideration of an application for zoning and development bylaw amendment to 11 on Martindale Road.
Yes, if I may, your worship. So this is a very similar application, different property owner. They're proposing to rezone it from single family residential also to the small lot residential SLR1 zone. If approved, ultimately it's envisioned as part of a future subdivision to facilitate 5 Bearland strata lots. The applicant held an open house on August the 11th from 3 to 7 p.m. They placed an ad in the Parks of Qualicum Beach News as well as delivered notice to surrounding residences. 9 persons signed the attendance sheet and no comments were received. And the recommendations are per the agenda.
Thank you. And again, I'm prepared to take all 4 recommendations. Councillor Wilson, seconded by Councillor Greer. Discussion.
Yes, thank you through you, your worship, to our director of planning. With that zoning, is it just what kind of housing is allowed on that?
If I may, your worship, through to Councillor Wilson, it's single family dwellings, similar. It's just on a smaller format lot.
But nothing bigger than single family. They couldn't do a duplex or anything?
If I may, worship, our single family zone does allow for a secondary suite. So you could call that an asymmetrical duplex if you wanted to, but it allows for really a standard house with a secondary suite.
Okay, we have no other questions. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. Ms. Bovin, am I saying it correctly? Bovin, okay. Manager of Finance, please.
Thank you, your worship. Council has recognized asset management implementation as a strategic priority project and has approved funding for a variety of asset management related initiatives. The 2022 to 2026 financial plan includes funding for a 2-year term capital asset accountant to advance the city's asset management implementation. The city intends to apply for a UBC asset management planning grant, which would provide up to $25,000 to offset a portion of the salary and benefit costs associated with this new position. As part of the grant application package, UBCM requires a current resolution of council indicating support for the proposed application and a willingness to provide overall grant management, which would be undertaken by staff. And the recommendation is as per the agenda.
Great, thank you. I need a mover and a seconder for the recommendation. Councillor Wilson, Councillor Chandler. Any discussion? Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, your worship. Through you to the Director of Finance. Is this going to be a permanent position?
Through your worship to Councillor Patterson, this currently is funded as a 2-year term position.
Any other questions? I will call the question then. All in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. Reports, Mr. Doxey.
If I may, through your worship, this report is for the second phase of associated utility renewal on Bagshaw Street. Specifically, this is for the sanitary renewal. And if you look at the site plan or the vicinity map at the very front of the report, it kind of illustrates why it was broken out into a second phase. The sanitary sewer goes through the rear yards of the majority of the properties where there would be a lot of surface repairs required, increasing cost, and then tying down onto the to the north end of Bagshaw through the commercial area where the road is already in a fairly new state and we don't want to dig it up. And so doing this work treacherously through a separate contract makes a lot of sense. Otherwise, the recommendations are per the report. And as you can see in the financial impact section, it is within budget with a very near 15% contingency, $40,000.
Okay. I need a mover and a seconder for the recommendations. Moved by Councillor O'Brien, second by Councillor Wilson. Discussion. All those in favor? Carried. Ms. Weeks.
This report is for council to consider renewing the encroachment agreement with the Royal Canadian Legion to allow the single-story wood frame structure to encroach approximately 1.2 meters onto Hearst Avenue. And the current agreement expired August 31st. The agreement prohibits any further encroachment from occurring onto Municipal Road and prohibits any alterations to the existing building in the encroachment area without approval of council and the recommendations per the council agenda.
Thank you. I need a mover and a seconder for both. Councillor Chandler, Councillor Wilson, discussion. Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Manager of Administrative Services. I'm not sure if you can answer this or not, but this is the building per se. This is not the parking that has typically been encroached on in the past, because Hearst has had a great deal of upgrades and everything, and there's a new sidewalk and plantings and everything. So it's just the one juttage of the Legion at this time. Is that correct?
Through your worship, yes, that's correct.
Okay. Everybody's questions are in. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Ms. Weeks, please.
So this is in accordance with the community charter. Council has discretion when considering applications for property tax exemptions. The city has a policy which provides guidance to council on the consideration and approval of permissive tax exemptions. So for the 2023 intake, we did receive 23 eligible applications. One was a new application from Forward House Society for their location on the Alberni Highway. And one of the previous applications that did apply late was not eligible. We did receive one late as well, which was eligible, which was included in the 23 eligible applications. The recommendation on the council agenda is in accordance with the policy and meeting the annual cap of $225,000.
Thank you. We have 5 recommendations here. Take them all at once. Need a mover and a seconder for the 5. Councillor Greer, second by Councillor Patterson. Discussion. Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Your Worship. So looking at the financial impact on our agenda, page 138, it actually says that we have a decrease over 2022, this going into 2023, of 33,603. So is that just because of just the 5 and the 1 coming off, or because obviously we've had taxation increases and such? So if you could just
Through you,
help
Your
me.
Worship. And our manager of finance can correct me if I'm wrong. Back earlier this year, we did amend the policy to have the cap of 225,000 as opposed to the percentage. In the past, we'd gone through the percentage. So that could, I'm getting the thumbs
You
up.
got the thumbs up.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions? All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Wow, you got a long list here today.
I do. So this report is submitted in accordance with the city's grant and aid policy. Council is requested to appoint 2 councillors to serve as a grant and aid select committee to review applications for financial assistance from community groups and organizations. The recommendations per the council agenda, and the 2 councillors that we have next up, we have noted are Councillor Greer and O'Brien.
Okay. I missed the sentence. I'm sorry.
The 2 councillors that we have next on our list to be appointed to the committee would be Councillor Greer and Councillor O'Brien.
That's only temporary for a month. Correct?
Yes, you're correct, Your Worship.
Why are we even doing this for
So this
one?
this is the fall grant and aid intake. So we would meet in the next couple of weeks and it would come
Okay.
back to
All right.
council.
So you want to get it done before we do the changeover. That's fine. Councillor
please.
Greer and Councillor O'Brien, that's fine with me. I need a mover and a seconder for all 3 recommendations. Councillor Chandler, Councillor Wilson. Discussion. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Ms. Holmes. I thought you would have left by now.
Sorry about that. I'll start again. Tonight's policy is our investment portfolio management policy. And it's part of what we discussed during our financial planning deliberations. And that's to bring some of these pieces that are instrumental in our long-term financial planning. And that includes our reserves policy and investment policy and all of our asset management initiatives. So this is one of the building blocks as part of that we'll be bringing to you this fall. And so the recommendation is in your agenda package. The policy itself is on page 162. And the template for the policy is reviewed by the Municipal Finance Authority, which provides a lot of guidance to municipalities with respect to their investments. And investments for municipalities are governed by Section 183 of the Community Charter. Our policy is completely in accordance with that, but just allows council to approve further provisions with respect to operating within those provisions of the Community Charter, and provides things like guidance around our objectives of principal protection, liquidity, and return on investment, and weighing those things against the risks associated with certain investments. It also provides some guidance with respect to diversification, credit ratings that we're comfortable operating within, and ensuring that it fits within our cash flow needs that are outlined in our 5-year financial plan, and ultimately within our longer range financial plans that would be outlined by our asset management plans. It also ensures that if we have restricted deposits on our accounts, that we have funds that are available to repay those as needed, as well as provide for any emergency funding that may arise. In terms of the financial impact to this policy, it's hard to predict. As you're likely all aware, interest rates have been on the rise. So it may increase our investment returns, it may decrease, just in terms of what's available in terms of investments and how we manage those investments as governed by the strategic priorities of council as outlined in the financial plan. So if you've got questions on anything in the policy, I'd be happy to answer those. Otherwise, the recommendations are per your agenda.
Thank you. Do you have a question for the delegation? Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, and through to Jetta. Thank you for this. The question is this a considerable departure? From what I got from the past budget meetings and so forth, we basically stayed very, very safe, and we had laddered GICs, and that's it. And as mentioned, the interest rates are going up. Those GIC rates will rise too, I hope. So the thing is that that is where we have. So is there a reason, is this quite a departure from that, I guess, direction that we were going? Is this quite a departure? Because I saw things that would talk about like risk tolerance. I saw things about also considering looking at a manager, like maybe a fund manager to provide advice at some time. You're looking at also Standard & Poor's and so forth, because you're trying to establish value of that particular thing. So that's setting off a couple of alarms for me right now, because I'm not, I really like the safe approach. So I'm just, this is a departure, and what is the reason for looking at that departure?
If I may, through the chair to Councillor O'Brien, it really isn't a departure. It's really documenting in policy council's approval of how we're managing those funds, and that your preference is that we are managing that very conservatively. It is considered by the MFA when we're doing investments with them, whether we have a policy in place. Their preference is that municipalities do have a policy in place. It also would provide council, if council was wanting to take more risk in the investments, you could provide different guidance in there as to the allowances on higher risk investments. What we've proposed here in the policy is very consistent with how we've been handling it for years, very much in accordance with the community charter and very much on a conservative basis. What I would suggest is that over the years, our investment balances have been increasing significantly. And so I think it's prudent that we have a policy in place that governs the management of those. As part of our policy, as part of our practice over the last number of years, we have considered credit ratings, and we work with a number of investment advisors who most of them have a municipal business where they're familiar with our legal restrictions and what we can invest in, but they will provide us with the credit risk on various, say, credit unions or things like that. What is the risk on this GIC versus maybe investing in a bond? And so we do get advice from professional investment advisors. Ultimately, it's up to the director of finance or a designate to choose amongst those choices and match that GIC ladder, as you made reference to ensure that we have funds available. So this really is documenting what our practice has been, and it has been a very conservative approach. For council's information, at the end of December last year, at our last year end, we had approximately $62 million in our investment portfolio. So I think having a documented policy that is endorsed by council is considered a best practice for financial management for municipalities and is strongly preferred by the investment advisors that we're working with. And especially as our portfolio grows, we want to make sure that we're managing that in accordance with council's risk preferences as well.
As a follow-up, Jetta, I'm kind of feeling a little better about that now, but it just as a best practice policy. The only statement you made was that it allows for the council of the day to maybe adjust the risk tolerance. And I don't think I want any council actually making that decision, quite frankly. I'd rather have you making that decision, honestly. But I don't think that that is a particularly wise move. Just because of different knowledge levels and so forth. And I don't think any council, elected or not, should be really messing with risk tolerance, because that's the people's money. And I would much rather we have a chief financial officer. I believe that that's their job to do that type of thing. And you do, and you and previous, of course, have kept us very in tune. That's why I know about the latter GICs, what it was. And I'm quite comfortable with that process. And so that would be great. But the only thing that, as I say, worries me if we're to pass this is putting power at to the council of the day to adjust. And I'm not happy with that particular.
Yeah, if I may, through the mayor to Councillor O'Brien, I certainly hear what you're saying. The community charter only provides so much room anyway. What this is saying is that the policy specifically provides the delegation from council to the director of finance or designate to provide that advice to council and to follow the policy as outlined. So 5.32 of the policy basically says the director of finance will establish an investment strategy and outline that. We'll report back to council as part of our annual financial statements as to what were our results with respect to our investment portfolio, and basically stating that you will maintain adequate liquidity and there will be consideration of different rates and different considerations with respect to the types of investments that we're investing in. That said, the window within which we are restricted by the community charter doesn't provide a lot of room outside of that. There may be reasons, and I don't know what they would be, that councils would want to push the limits to the outside of what the community charter says you're allowed, but certainly the policy delegates that back to the director of finance. Okay.
I need a mover and a seconder for the recommendations. Councillor Greer, second by Councillor Wilson. Discussion, any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Oh, please note Councillor O'Brien is opposed.
Thank you.
Bylaws, the first and second reading, zoning and development amendment bylaw 2022, number 2000.141, tax amendment to comprehensive development CD 31 at 243 Corfield Street South. I need a mover and a seconder for the recommendations. Councillor Chandler, seconded by Councillor O'Brien. All those in favor? Carried. Second reading zoning and development amendment bylaw 2022, number 2000.139, map amendment to small lot residential SLR1 at 625 and 633 Pioneer Crescent. I need a mover and seconder. Moved by Councillor Greer, seconded by Councillor Wilson. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Second reading zoning and development amendment bylaw 2022, number 2000.140, map amendment to small lot residential SLR1 at 211 Martindale Road. I need a mover and a seconder for those motions, for those two. Councillor O'Brien, seconded by Councillor Chandler. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Final adoption, zoning and development amendment bylaw 2022, number 2000.133, to facilitate residential use on a portion of the first story of the building at 164 Alberni Highway. We need a mover and a seconder for the recommendation. Councillor Chandler, and seconded by Councillor Greer. Discussion. All those in favor? Carried. Final adoption. Zoning and Development Amendment Bylaw 2022, number 2000.136, to allow automobile parking as a permitted land use within the tourist commercial CS2 zone. I need a mover and a seconder for the recommendation. Moved by Councillor Wilson, seconded by Councillor Greer. All those in favor? Carried. Councillor Patterson, please introduce your notice of motion.
Thank you, Your Worship. This was to allow for any councillor who may wish to attend the Vancouver Island Economic Alliance Summit in 2022 in Nanaimo, as it hasn't been held in full previous fashions due to COVID and having Zoom and that take over a lot of different things. So my recommendation is that additional council members be authorized to attend the State of the Island Economic Summit in Nanaimo, BC on October 26th and 27th, 2022, and that the 2022-2026 financial plan be amended accordingly to include up to $845 per councillor.
Need a seconder for that motion? Councillor Wilson, discussion? You're first.
Thank you, Worship. When I was thinking about this, and that at the time, it was to the effect that we had not been attending a great deal of conferences that are educational and beneficial to the city of Parksville. This is one that I've attended in the past as a business person in regards to economic aspects and that. And I felt that it, based on the fact too, that we hadn't been attending, that this is one towards the end of this term that would still be beneficial to any past councillor or person not running or running, specifically running, that it's of benefit to the city of Parksville to get some of that information and being in attendance and everything. So that's why I put it forward.
Thank you. Councillor Franz.
Thank you, through your worship, to, Councillor Patterson. Just curious, when you mention here, the motion is that additional council members, what do we currently have in place for council to attend?
So when I asked in regards to about attendance, and that we just hadn't really made any decisions or anything, but the mayor was the only one that was at that point in time put forward to attend.
Okay. And did I hear correctly that you said to keep this open to past councillors as well?
Well, based on today and Councillor Greer, who will not be running again in the future, this would be his last term and that. But if you wanted to attend, then, but as I said, I think it's a benefit to anyone moving forward in this time of.
But to maintain for current council, though.
Yes, the current council. Sorry, Councillor Franz, that yes, just this existing council.
Councillor O'Brien.
Two questions. One first to the chair, to your worship. Have you attended this before, your worship? I was just trying to get your opinion. Is it a worthwhile venture type of thing that is applicable to council business? That's my question.
And that's a really good question. I find that it's a great networking situation, and it gives you a chance to talk to some people. And there's a significant number of ministers walking around that you get to talk to. But do I come home with a great deal of information? Generally not on that case. Just to make a point here, I booked it with the intent that if for some reason I'm not here to take it, that it's transferable to anybody else that it happens to be. So that's the way I did it. So I don't know if that answered you or not.
It does, thank you. And partly in the question to our CAO, when is inauguration of new council?
Okay.
If I may, your worship. So this current council will still be in office until November 4th.
November 4th.
Yeah.
Thank you. And my other question would then go to Councillor Patterson, covering everybody here. So Councillor Patterson, do you think it would be appropriate to limit this to, say, maybe like 2 council members? As decided by council, I think because of availability and so forth. But the thing is that could we limit it, is assuming that the mayor has already booked a spot type of thing, and then 1 further councillor. Do you think we could get by with that? And then those individuals could bring the information back to council? Would that work for you?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. If we could amend that to put a cap on it, then I would certainly support this.
You are welcome to make that friendly amendment, or I can adjust it.
Not sure it's a friendly amendment, but I'd let it go with that. Go ahead.
You okay with that?
Yep. All right. So what we're saying is 1 person. Okay, two spots, 2 from council. We okay with that? All right. I can live with that. I think that's probably about as fair as it can go. Not to assign it to any particular person, but on October the 15th, we'll know who's around and who's not. And at that point in time, we can make the decision. So I think it's a fair comment. So I'll call the question if everybody's in favor of that. Did we get the writing on it, by the way? Did you get the notes? Okay. All those in favor? It's carried. Thank you. New business? No, I'm sorry. All right, Councillor Chandler.
Thank you, through your worship. I just wanted to point out a couple of things that are coming up. For anybody that doesn't know, we have Tour de Rock coming to the island here starting in September early. Should say mid-September, sorry. And we have the pleasure of having one of our councillors, Councillor Fraz, riding in the tour. He was selected 2 years ago as an ex-firefighter to be on the ride. Adam and I were in the fire department together. Anybody that doesn't know, I was firefighter of the year 2014, so I don't know if that came up ever, but that's what happened. And then since then, Councillor Fraz has
he almost went a whole week without bringing that up.
I'm sorry, I thought I'd mention it. And then since then, Councillor Fraz has been trying to one-up me this entire time. So now I'm feeling like he's done that with being on the Tour de Rock. So I think it's really fantastic that he's part of it. I also wanted to mention that we have a couple of large events where the tour actually arrives in town on September 29th. And that's going to be quite the gala with the head shaving. And I'd like to promote any of our councillors here. If anybody's interested in shaving their heads, we'd like to get your names now if we could. And then secondly, on the 1st of October, we have a food truck festival that's completely set up to raise funds for the Tour de Rock as well. So we feel like we're going to have some really good events here, some good money raising, and Councillor Fraz over his limit of where he needs to be at $25,000. So just wanted to bring that up.
Thank you. Councillor Patterson, try to top that.
I'm not going to top that. I have a question. And that, do you have an event tomorrow, Councillor Fraz?
So yes, tomorrow we do. We have a barbecue happening outside Full Throttle Hair Salon by the Dairy Queen parking lot, 1 to 4. Be a great barbecue. It's also a very special day as it's the 9th birthday of the honorary rider in our community who's undergone leukemia treatment. So it's a special day. Come on out, get a burger if you're hungry.
Just to carry that one further, that it's an open barbecue to the public, right? And the time again?
It's happening 1 to 4.
All right, thank you.
Come on down 12 o'clock. I'll be there though, starting it up. So
Well, since I'm being a bachelor starting tomorrow morning, I may end up eating there. Okay, any other new business? All right, then I need a mover and a seconder for adjournment. Counselor Greer and Counselor Chandler, all those in favor? Carried. Thank you, folks. Actually, it wasn't near as bad as I thought it was going to be.